print out lists for us, and if you have questions or concerns, I would, get in touch with Robin, and she'll be able to help walk you through what you need to do to get those students post-tested. Questions?
And we're seeing more green here too.
I think it's hard at that ABE level 1 where you only have 3 students to, make increases. ABE level 4, we're up students. Marcel's still here yelling. It's minimal.
Well, yeah, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
When you look at these 2 things that I look at the numbers, is there anywhere we're above 10% below where we were last year? That's an area to look at. There's 1. So that's the first one. Then you have to look at how many students are in that group. There's only 3. So 1 student making a post-test gain puts you right where we were last year. So I look at those 2 pieces. So to me, we're doing well. I think we should be patting ourselves on the back, in particular for the ABE level 3, because that's way up from where it was last year. It's almost 20% of an increase. Level 6 is just those who finish the high set test. So they're the ASC high, the 246 and above students. I also want to give kudos to the ESL teachers because they're beginning level with a lot more students, 20 more students, that we have much better numbers for than we did last year there as well. So those are that level 3 and ESL level 1, big improvements from the prior year. Now I promise I'll go away.
All right, see you later.
10% or more.
That's where I would say, because if you start to look at some of those categories, you have to look at the number of students.
Right.
When there's 100 students, 1 person's 1%. So most of those have less than 1. So 2 to 3 to 4% can be a matter of 2 or 3 students. So when you get above 10 or 20, go back and look at how big the group size is too.
And then this is when you add the corrections in, which is still green. And then we have a few more changes with the corrections added in. But again, we have, there's nowhere that we're in a change of more than 10% in a negative way. So, any questions about the enrollment and the persistence data? If not, it's time to talk about CASAs, and Amy and Robin will do so.
I ran a data integrity report today, and as of today, we have 125 students that are eligible to post-test. We have 14 here at K-Life in the ABE program, 26 in the ESL program. Iowa City ABE, we have 10, and Iowa City ESL, we have 60. And the rest is in the outlying areas or unknown, which are those students that have more than 1 location, or they've been at more than 1 location in a year, which is about 13. So if we had everybody post-tested right now, we would have a 43% post-test rate for the year. So right now we're at 27%, which is 3% ahead if we compare last year's data. And we are 6% ahead on those that show a gain on their post-test, which is great. So Robin will be sending out reports at the end of the week, so please watch for those. It's vital that we get the students post-tested, as Marcel and Sid both mentioned, before break, so we don't lose those students. And because of the new periods of participation model that we are on, we'll have no way of catching those students after the fact. So please be diligent, and I will also be sending out reminders after you guys have a little bit of a chance to work on those. And I think that's it for me.
And that covered most everything I was going to say too, but I will just reiterate because it's extremely important. I will be running reports on Friday, and it's very important. I've been contacting all my advisees already and letting them know if they are getting close to that 90 days to get back in. They have the 40 hours or are close to their 40 hours to get back in here and get their CASAS tests taken, post-test taken, because it is not going to be a post-test if it isn't done before that 90-day. Or maybe 120-day, depending on how the state does it. But to be safe, 90 days, get it done.
Okay. So again, get the post-testing done, and watch for the list coming from Robin on Friday and Amy later. Do you know when you're going to send out the updated list?
Probably the week of the 10th.
Okay.
10th or 11th.
And we have great numbers right now, so let's keep it going. So now we're up for HiSET, Sid.
So, yep, the OPTs are in kin. If you're looking for accommodation forms, they're on kin. Look for everything in kin because we keep it really updated as far as what the HiSET is asking. At this point, I would not get rid of your 3 tests that you have for this fiscal year. Or not fiscal, for this calendar year, because we're not sure which test might roll over to 2018 for that 3rd piece. So hopefully we'll have all of that tidied up from Mike in Des Moines before break so that you can have your new verification forms and all of that in your hands when you start back. That's what we're shooting for. So I guess that's all.
And then are there verification forms coming also?
Yeah, from Mike. As
Okay.
soon as we figure out which tests and what, he usually asks for input from instructors on how many he thinks need to be correct in order to pass. But he has told us that he would have that before break.
Okay.
He originally said January, and we said, no, we need it before break. So
Right.
keeping our fingers crossed.
So any questions for Sid on HiSET updates?
There are more questions next year. There's, on the official test, there's going to be between 5 and 10 additional questions on the official test starting in January. And that is because they've looked at the keystrokes of students that have passed and those that haven't. And they realize that they can fit the 5 or 10 questions into each subject area. So keep that in mind, but there should be plenty of time for them to finish it.
Okay. So ESL updates from Barb and Colleen.
Brandy, I have a little HiSET update.
Okay, go back to HiSET updates.
So the HiSET official scores will expire after 5 years. What that means is anybody who's actually completed the HiSET, those are good forever. But those that are kind of in limbo or are really struggling with getting completed through, maybe they can't pass math or they can't pass writing, those where the clock is starting to tick on those students. So the way the GED used to be, the scores were good for so long. So it started in 2014, so in January 2019, those scores will start to expire if those students took testing in 14 and haven't completed yet. So Marcel and I are going to be putting together a letter, and we're going to start working on that the first part of this year, try to encourage those students that have not completed to come in and get going and finish up before they have to start all over again. And that's all I have.
Okay. now we'll go on to Barb and Colleen. So, Barb, do you want to share first since you're right here?
Okay. Probably the newest developments we've had is this particular session. We had to add 2 different classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Our largest group of attendance is high beginning and intermediates. So those 2 classes have been going very well, and I think attendance has been good. And then Brandy did a hybrid course for the ESL students in computers, and they are just loving it. I hope you are too.
I am loving it. It is very awesome.
It's more than we can offer in the classroom, really. And they've been pretty faithful with their attendance too, and they're learning all the foundations and basics of using a computer, and hopefully they'll be able to use, are they using Word now, or they're doing emails?
Still on email.
Emails, okay.
So I'm kind of using the North Star Digital Literacy Assessment as kind of the basis for it. And so if everybody thinks back to when they first touched a computer, okay, so, you know, that's probably 20 years ago for some of us, 30 years ago maybe for others. And you first touch a computer and you're not quite sure how things work. So, you know, we still struggle with passwords on a daily basis. We struggle getting signed into Gmail. We're struggling with some of those really basic things that all of us can do probably with our eyes shut. But they're really learning and they want to learn, and they're getting their hands on the technology, so it's not sitting and collecting dust. So it's all been all around a really good thing. And so we're going to probably finish out this session with mostly email. We may get into Word. Thursday's agenda is to upload an attachment to an email.
Oh. Okay.
So their assignment was to take a picture of themselves between now and Thursday, so we can have it. So yeah, it's been great. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, I hope we can continue it, and maybe it will continue for quite a time. Maybe another generation will get to try it too. So, because they're always asking me about it. So we really appreciate that you're doing it too. So, but other than that, I don't think I have any really new news for the Cedar Rapids ESL program.
All right. So I'm going to unmute Iowa City, and Colleen, can you share any updates?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Good job, Connie. The updates I have are just brief. We're coming off a season of going to conferences, so some of us went to the Iowa Culture and Language Conference and the Minnesota TESOL Conference, which you'll be hearing some people share out about later. We're looking at continuing programming in Coralville in the spring, which is our new site, and looking at handing off some of those duties to Heidi Graves, who's teaching out there currently at night. Do you want to wave, Heidi? Yeah. So she'll be coordinating intake and the programming with the building staff there, which is another dimension. I guess I don't mean to make it sound spacey, but it is another dimension. We'll also be adding 2 sections to Iowa City in the morning as a pilot. We still have an outsized demand relative to the number of placements we have, and we have some funding that we could designate for spring courses, and we're not sure that could continue to fall, but we'll pilot it, see how it goes, and then cross that bridge, I suppose. I was putting together a fact sheet for community partners recently in order to try to help Iowa City address the need for more free non-credit English classes in the community. And in doing so, I had to look back at some data and realize that our program has grown, and thanks David Cohen for the math on this, our program has grown by about 300% since 2014.
and we're doing our best to grow it smoothly and maintain quality and keep going. So sometimes in Iowa City, I think we feel discouraged because of all the no's that we say to people coming in the door or calling. But if we look at the last 5 years, we've really shown an effort to accommodate that need as best we can.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, I have.
And then, so just to finish up, we are headed into another round of testing in our program. Our morning classes started in September, so those students are becoming ready to test. And some of us still have to recover tests from the internet outage extravaganza week that happened the last time in October, maybe. So should be seeing more post-tests there. And in our most recent meeting, we studied integration of digital literacy standards into teaching, and we put at least 2 standards on our course maps for the upcoming session and talked about those North Star standards you mentioned, Brandy, and how to effectively teach those. So from our meeting, some of the things that we shared out that seemed to make it more manageable and effective for the student included starting simple with a technology task, as you mentioned, and maybe just making it a very one-step or receptive task at first, like clicking on a hyperlink to listen to something, or typing in a web address to listen to something, and then increasing the level of cognitive demand as you build on those skills over time, and just balancing the level of the computer task with the demand of the English task that you're requiring. And then one more kind of mutual tip we came up with is group learners. When you're introducing technology to learners who are new to that, students generally like working in pairs. It encourages language use and interaction and community building. And so putting students in teams on a computer or threes helps them accomplish the task, helps them help each other, and keeps the pressure off the one teacher trying to manage a room of, in some cases, 24 computers if you give everyone a computer. And we know how that goes sometimes, even in a room full of very computer literate adults. There's always a little technology issue. So that's just something we came up with. I thought I'd share, and that's the end of the update.
All right. And I don't know, like I said, I was having problems with my Zoom. And so everybody out in Zoom land, you're fine. But here in Cedar Rapids, we can't. I'm having a hard time. So, all right. So, next, we have conference updates, and we are, Kat's gonna talk first about her, were you at ICLC or were you at the, okay, so you were at ICLC. All right, so Kat's going to share with us about,
so like Colleen said, there were quite a few of us that went to the Monday conference with one of the staff from Minnesota who gave tips from working with low literacy students. And then one of the things that I did was a workshop, and I did not see any of the other Kirkwood staff there, but I thought we've been talking about how a lot of the things that's good for ESL is good for everybody. And one of the things that they did is they gave a no prep or low prep games and warm-ups for literacy, ESL. Anytime you have any kind of vocabulary, reading activities, you know, so it could be social studies, it could be, I mean, some of it might be a little bit more difficult for math, but they had a word generator where you take a large vocabulary word that you learned and you ask them in teams to come up with new words only using the letter from that. ABC lists, so you give them the ABCs and they have to create a word from the topic that you've been studying. So like say I'm doing health right now, they have to one word for A, one for B, C, and see how many can fill in. Vocabulary taboo, categories. One of the things I thought would be good for low level was drawing directions, where you have a picture on a piece of paper and you have teams, and one person can't see the picture and the other person has to describe what they see and the other person has to try to draw it, so that they can kind of work on their listening and communication skills, because that seems to be something. And then sentence, story mix-up, organization, where you give them either a sentence or a topic or a date, and you try to have them make a line up without talking. And then one where I added that wasn't on my printout, which Brandy has my copies, so she could email out the worksheets that go over all of these. They give you the directions for all of these, which would be, you have a story that has blanks and you have the finished copy in the hallway, and they have to run and fill in the blanks. One person has to dictate to the other what they're saying. So they have to pay attention to word placement. So that's actually something that I just threw in there because it's worked really well in my class. The other thing I wanted to let you guys know, it's not on here, is I went to something about refugees in Iowa, and I thought it was amazing. It had the video called A Promise Called Iowa, which talks about the refugees coming in back in 95, or not 95, 75? Yeah, and so I won a video that's by PBS, that's basically the history of the refugee population and some of the things that kind of help you understand more about refugees. So Marcel and I talked, and anyone who would like to borrow the video, Barb is asked to borrow it first. So anyone else, if you'd like to borrow the video, watch it in your center, we can mail it to you and then you can mail it back. But I thought it was amazing and just gave you a lot of good information, especially if you're not someone who's in ESL and you kind of want to get a better picture of what some of your students might be dealing with. Okay, that's it. All right, thanks, Pat.
All right, next up is Christine from Iowa City.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just picked out 3 different workshops that I went to that I thought had a lot of benefit. The first one I went to was the pre-conference with the culturally relevant literature, and the presenter had just a plethora of children's literature to really address a lot of different issues and different cultures. And I was actually really impressed because I've really critically looked at children's books for a long time since my kids are older. But I was really impressed on how you could use that in a classroom to generate discussion, to start promoting more basic writing, because people don't find children's literature threatening as maybe other type of literature. And she had just probably 100 books there of different topics, and it was really good. I've been working with her to maybe try and also get some youth literature, something a little bit more advanced. But I found her presentation was really, she directed her presentation of how you could use it in the classroom and then how parents could use it with their kids. But again, she also emphasized the idea that what's good for our ESL students is good for our adult students too. And so it was a really great presentation. Then the second presentation that really I got a lot out of was protecting our children in a time of uncertainty. And that those 2 presenters talked about the pressure that our undocumented students are facing currently now with the political environment and the psychological, mental, even possible physical conditions that they're living in, and how that could affect their opportunity for education and workforce. I don't know about everybody, but when I turn on the news, I just can't imagine being an undocumented worker living in the United States. And the fear, the uncertainty of just getting up and how their life is going to turn out that same day. Parents having struggled with, what if there's a raid and my kids are at school? What if I get deported? We have a couple of students who are DACA students, and they don't know what's happening. So it was very good. I got a number of handouts that, not knowing any of the legal aspects, what could I potentially guide people to better resources so that they know what their rights are, and that not to disappear and go underground and become victims in our society. So that presentation was really, really good. And then the last one was about cultural proficiency. And I would love to hear the speaker, if we ever get a chance to have that speaker come in and talk to us, going beyond just when it comes to culture, thinking about food and what people wear, and all the surface type of what we classify as culture, and really becoming proficient and understanding different groups of people who we work with. So those are some highlights that I took from the conference. It was really good. I'd recommend it to anyone.
All right, thanks, Christine. All right, so next Colleen is going to share about the MEL Ed Conference and Project Be Glad. So, Colleen, I did make you a co-host if you want to share your screen.
Okay. So yeah, for this first one, I'd like to be on screen because I actually have to show you something that I'm doing. At the conference, there were so many strategies and approaches mentioned, or excuse me, presented. So I'm picking two quick ones that might be of benefit to both teachers of native and non-native speaking students, and then one beginning literacy resource. So the first one is a strategy recommended by Project Be Glad. They've won an Excellence Award from the Department of Education for helping schools accommodate English language learners and help them achieve academic success. The strategy is really just total physical response. And if you have a foreign language teaching background, you probably know what this is, but it's using gestures and movements to find higher level vocabulary. A lot of us English teachers, if we're teaching HiSET, ABE, or ESL, need to help learners acquire academic vocabulary, and so they suggested this method as something that could help them remember the word in a meaningful way, retain it for use later, and get enough comprehensible input of that word over and over and over to help them with the pronunciation and the later production of that word. So I'm going to show you an example of what I'm talking about, and then I'm going to ask you to try it. It's a pretty fun strategy from my point of view, and I've used it with high schoolers, middle schoolers, and my adult class as well, and they were very receptive, and I was kind of surprised by that because it can seem kind of like playful, but I think everyone loves to play. So let's say you have to teach the higher level academic word metacognition. Metacognition, what is metacognition? First, you define the word for students. I think as teachers, we know to do that for our higher level words. Metacognition is thinking about thinking. And then you ask the students, say it with me, metacognition. And probably with English learners, you have to help them figure out where the word stress is, metacognition. And then the TPR part comes in. And then you need to use it in an example sentence because students may or may not know how to use the word. So I use my metacognition to figure out which strategies I use to pass the math test. So definition, example sentences, pronunciation, and then TPR is actually adding a gesture. So you can say, students, to help you remember metacognition, let's make a gesture, or say this with me, metacognition. So that's my gesture for metacognition, thinking about thinking. So could you do this with me now? Like, I'll say metacognition, and you say metacognition and use a gesture on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Metacognition. All right, so at this point, you'll probably get some laughs, some giggles, some people that won't do it, some people that'll ham it up, and that word is memorable. And you keep using that gesture when you say the word again in context. You'll kind of know when to cut it off, when you're done beating that horse. Another way you can do this if you have a vocabulary set to input of higher level words is to have the students do this gesture on their own, make their own on the count of 3, and pick one for the class. So I'm going to give you another word. The word is tyrant. On the count of 3, could everyone in this meeting make a gesture for the word tyrant and say the word tyrant? 1, 2, 3. Tyrant. Okay. And then you might talk about which gesture you liked and how it relates to the word meaning best. I really liked Mike's gesture in the back because he went like that. And so thereafter, you can say tyrant together. And it's just, again, it helps them remember the meaning. And you're really working that word more than once so that they hear that word more than once. And for English learners especially, not having been exposed to these higher level words in their everyday interactions, and for our non-native speakers who don't hear them often at home, they have to hear it a lot before they can ever produce it and then produce it in context. So it's just how many times can you say and use the word, and this is a fun way. One more, just for fun. The word is strategy. Strategy. On the count of 3, can you think of a gesture for strategy? 1, 2, 3. Okay. You could have learners explain their gesture. I use this in class and it hardly takes any time at all. We don't really get bogged down in the conversation about the gesture. I used this strategy last week to teach car parts and it was really fun. So, and then the other quick thing I want to share out is actually on screen. I guess I'm not going to show you the Project Be Glad website, but you might just want to Google Be Glad and check it out. The other thing is for beginning literacy teachers in our program. I mentioned this to Barb. I know Barb Shreve is aware of this resource, but I recently realized through attending the Language and Culture Conference that this resource has been updated in a big way, and it could be extremely useful.
Have you started sharing yet, Colleen?
Huh?
Have you started sharing your screen yet?
No, thanks.
Okay. we need to see you share your screen.
All right. Thanks. I made that mistake a while back and no one knew what I was talking about in another Zoom meeting. So these are basic readers for beginning literacy students from Bow Valley College. I believe it's in Canada. You can print these readers. You can see the little booklets that they make. And the nice thing is they are at a beginning level of reading, but the stories feature adults. Children's literature certainly has its potential. There's also really a lack of literature starring adults who have adult problems. And so these would be of high interest, we think, to our students. A nice part about this page, and I don't know why it's so big, sorry, is there's a link to the literacy readers. So I'll just give you a sense of what's available there at different levels. Wow, this is really still updated. I can't see my bar. bear with me. It's different on my computer. The really cool thing is you as a teacher can print these off. There are teacher guides, like how do you use this book with students? What kinds of activities can you do it to build knowledge about words and phonemes and stuff like that. But the learner page is for English learners, and it's really awesome. It's just simplified. You can click on a story that's of interest to you. And what's often lacking in text for English learners is an available audio support. So new to this site, if you've used this before, is you can now read the book Inga Katzer and hear it spoken. So let's look at Dang Start School.
Dang Start School.
So you can present the book, and it definitely shows much better on a screen that's not. This screen's a little weird. Now I can't get it to navigate. Let's try this. Let me try another one.
Food from home.
So you can flip the pages. And
Mary goes to school on Monday.
as a teacher, you can present this in the front of the class while the learners either have their booklet or are looking at it on an iPad.
Mary buys tea.
You can keep it slow. You can go back and relook at words. And then, like I said,
Mary buys tea.
when you're done with the story, the teacher's guide tells you how to work that story to help the learners acquire reading skills. So I thought that was really awesome. The audio feature wasn't there before. The online presentation wasn't there before. There are a bunch of PDFs you can print out through the print shop at Kirkwood to give learners their own copy of the book. So that might be of use to some of our beginning level teachers. That's it.
All right. Thanks, Colleen. Can you stop your screen share?
Yeah. I think. Okay.
Thank you. So, next we have Robin up for talking about hyperdocs.
Hey, I watched a web training about hyperdocs, but that was the most important thing I got from it. And do you have the list I sent with the email or not?
Yep.
No? Okay. The thing that was really good about this is it had a lot of websites that will be very useful that people could incorporate into their classes or working with students. We got tutors, the tutors could do this. But there's a big list of websites, and some of the ones I've mentioned to my students, and I think it's on the, oh yeah, schoolyourself.org. It is strictly math, but they did mention to me that it does not have exponents yet. So if you have students that need help with exponents, that's not going to help. But it's a free website where they can get whatever instruction they want. There's puzzles that you can do. The thing I liked about the edpuzzles.com was that I a lot of times get videos that I find on YouTube, but they're too long or there's parts that I don't really want. This allows you to cut and make the videos however long you want to. You can even voice over on the videos and have your own voices and stuff, so it's a really cool site. There's all kinds of different things. Another thing that I found really interesting that I found out after I emailed this to Brandy was that one of these, and I can't remember which site it was, but there was a site that had research about how successful people are happy. It's not if you're successful that makes you happy, it's if you're happy that makes you successful. And they use this research project where people get a box of tacks and matches and a candle and are told to figure out a way to make it so that you can light the candle and it will not get wax on the table as it melts. And they gave, and the same experiment was used in a recent essential ed video that they did for a totally different angle. So on the one that was in this list was that if you're happy, you're going to succeed. And they made people happy. They gave them money, they gave them gift cards, they gave them candy, they gave them all kinds of stuff before they got started. It wasn't a reward for their work. It was get happy first, and then we're going to have you do this project. And the most successful people then were the ones that were happy. On that one from Essential Ed, what they did is they gave rewards to people as they completed, and they found that rewards decrease performance. So a lot of interesting stuff from this, but one thing I for sure wanted to point out for the ESL people, that learningchocolate.com is good for vocabulary for ESL students.
Learning chocolate, right?
So there is a link to watch the whole video, but that's a whole hour. These links were the main ones that I thought were really good and useful.
Yeah, because I clicked on it. I was like, I don't have an hour to watch this today.
Yeah.
So, but thanks for sharing all the great resources, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions that we need to address or talk about?
I know something.
Okay, Sid.
Pick me. If you have ordered a shirt, I will be sending you an email telling you how much to send me a check for, if you could please. I need to get that up to Kevin. They have been ordered, but I have to collect all the money or you're not going to get it. So
And the check
if you
to
ordered
Kirkwood?
one,
The check to Kirkwood?
to Kirkwood, yep. That would be great. So I'll send emails to everyone that I ordered a shirt or two for, and the sooner I can get that, the better. Would be great. Thanks.
All right. So I know that out in the other Zoom land, it probably worked better when I was sharing it as a actual PowerPoint, but here it's working better to do it this way. So upcoming events are Pathways to Success training. Please email Marcel by tomorrow if you're interested. And again, that we're looking to do that before we leave for Christmas break, winter break. Collaborative Learning Day is on January 11th. Registration is available through KSELT, but it is not required. You're welcome to come, but you do not have to come. Sheltered instruction training is on January 12th, and that is required for all full and part-time staff. And that is from 9 a.m. to noon here at K-Life. The state virtual conference is January 30th to February 1st in the afternoons those 3 days. And there will be no January Zoom meeting. Instead, attend that. WIOA Partner in Service is February 19th, and the topic is Understanding Disabilities. And our next Zoom is Tuesday, February 27th at 1 p.m. Are there any other events that we need to add or talk about? All right. If not, our next Zoom meeting is Tuesday, February 27th at 1 p.m. And we're done 10 minutes early. Yay!
Yeah.